Hello everyone, I'm Jordana Van of Ravenlight Holistic Healing, home of the most comprehensive animal totem and spirit guide videos on the web, and welcome to white-tailed deer as a totem. In case you're new to the concept of totems and spirit guides, I actually have two videos on white-tailed deer. This video is about whitetails as a totem, which means that white-tailed deer is a lifelong teacher linked to certain aspects of your personality and the challenges you experience in developing them to their highest potential. An animal's more likely to be a totem if you've always had an interest in it, or it's shown up frequently in your life. If instead you're just suddenly running into white-tailed deer everywhere and you wonder if there's some meaning attached to this, you may find my white-tailed deer as a spirit guide video more immediately helpful. That video will be out soon if it isn't already. And if you'd like further clarification about the difference between a totem and a spirit guide, I have a video about that too, called Understanding the Difference Between an Animal Totem and an Animal Spirit Guide, which you can also find on my channel. Also, if you enjoy my work, don't forget to like the video and to subscribe to my channel. Subscribing is one of the best ways to support the creation of more videos. As a writer, and ultimately these videos are really freaking big writing projects, there's nothing more personally motivating than knowing that there are people out there who are eager to hear what you produce next. And lastly, if you've always wanted to work with me but you missed your window the last time, I'm now offering a limited number of one-off sessions each month. These are available to new clients only, and at this moment only to U.S. residents, though I intend to return to seeing international clients in the future, so stay posted. For more information, including descriptions of the sessions I offer, the cost of each, and how to schedule, please visit my website, www.ravenlightholistichealing.com, and click on the Sessions tab. So, we really need to start by addressing a controversial topic: deer hunting. Here in the United States, white-tailed deer are the premier choice of big game sports hunters. And even 10,000 years before they were hunted primarily for sport, many indigenous peoples relied upon them as a critical source of food, clothing, tools, and other essentials. Our large predators, wolves and mountain lions, for example, and even our smaller predators like coyotes, also prey upon whitetails. And so we can't talk about deer without talking about hunting, as much of their symbolism centers around their being a prey animal, whether the predator involved is human or otherwise. I have complicated opinions about hunting, and I'm sure that many of you do as well. But I am going to ask you guys to refrain from sharing your opinions on hunting in the comments section, because this video is about interpreting an existing situation, not determining its relative morality. No matter our personal feelings about hunting, deer are hunted. And more, as we will discuss in a bit, white-tailed deer have only survived in the United States because of sports hunters, and that puts a real twist on things. So, what does it mean for you when your totem is the epitome of hunting culture? Unless you are a hunter yourself or an ecologist, there's a good chance that you view white-tailed deer as victims. When we identify with an animal that we perceive as a vulnerable innocent, it is often the case that we, ourselves, feel at risk of being overpowered or victimized. We often feel as though people are violating our space or using us, or we may instead or also feel that the world, Mother Earth, herself is being abused. Deer are often the totems of those who care for the well-being of the environment and are deeply affected by the way it has been dishonored and destroyed. Because hunting can be a very expensive hobby and more money tends to equal more power, you may also feel at the mercy of the rich and powerful. You fear that these people can take everything from you that matters, even your life. These are pretty frightening feelings to carry. What we often forget, or you may not know, is that whitetails are highly challenging prey. They are wary and canny and fast, and their sense of smell is nearly impossible to fool. If this were not the case, sports hunters would not be so interested in pursuing them or in displaying them as trophies. Besting the deer is viewed as a statement of the hunter's patience, determination, and skill. And in order for this to be true, there must be a good chance that the deer will win. Any experienced hunter will tell you that sometimes, despite doing all the right things and possessing state-of-the-art equipment, they still come home empty-handed. And yet, much of the time, the deer does die. Symbolically, this represents a giving of our all, or at the very least, a substantial amount of ourselves. If you're a deer person, this may sound as though you are doomed to a life of self-sacrifice, but thankfully that is not the case at all. Or rather, it is not the case if you cultivate the pride of the deer, which will allow you to give on your terms. The best way I can explain this is by invoking the traditional perspective held by some Indigenous American cultures. And please note that I said some and not all. It's a popular misconception that all Indigenous tribes share the same beliefs and practices. So, in some Indigenous cultures, the prey does not exist simply to be conquered and used, but is an intelligent person in its own right, and a powerful one at that. Only if it determines that the hunter is worthy of such a tremendous gift does it consciously choose to give its life. This means that it is not the hunter who kills the animal, but the animal who yields to the hunter it deems worthy. Where it is not the animal itself that chooses to give itself to the hunter, it is usually the master of game or a similarly named divine being who keeps all the animals together in a certain place and releases them to be hunted by the humans if humans live in accordance with certain laws. Taking the life of an animal is a serious business. One must do so with gratitude and humility and respect, and the scales must be balanced by performing prescribed rituals, such as disposing of the animal's remains in a specific way, or hosting a ceremonial feast. Among the Squamish, a hunter could not tell anyone that he was planning on hunting, nor could he tell anyone where he had gone to find game, or he would never be able to kill another animal. Admonishments against overhunting also occur often in traditional myths. If the animal's numbers are dwindling, one may not hunt them, and if they do, it happens at their peril. One must also avoid any form of teasing or toying with the animal or speaking unfavorably about it. To fail to do so risks offending the animal or the master of game, who will make their displeasure known by causing illness, death, or other misfortune to fall upon the hunter and his family, or by robbing the hunter of his luck, causing him to no longer be able to feed and clothe those in his care. In some of the tribes in which the animal is believed to gift itself to the hunter, such as the Kluane First Nation, animals are also seen as powerful creatures which must be dominated in order to kill them. To that end, hunting magic was employed to overpower, outsmart, or trick the prey. These two views, that the animal gifts itself to a worthy hunter and that the animal is overpowered by the hunter, are not mutually exclusive. In both cases, respect for the animal is critical, and to fail to respect the animal or to forego the prayer of thanks and gratitude for its life is to risk bringing tremendous misfortune to the hunter and his family. Additionally, even in the presence of the belief that the prey must be overpowered, the animal is not seen as a mindless victim, but a powerful, magical force with whom one engages at one's peril. In one version of a Lakota story, deer can appear as beautiful women who lead a man astray with an alluring perfume, and then suddenly turn back into a deer once more. Upon finding himself tricked, the man might have the urge to kill the deer in retribution, but if he does so, the tribe will deem him weak, and he will either be driven insane or meet an unfortunate death. To instead walk away from the deer not only meant that the hunter kept the respect of the deer, and therefore his life, but that the other men of the tribe would view him as possessing power and self-control. So even though deer were prey, they were not helpless, and successful hunters were not reckless killers, but appropriately patient, cautious, and respectful. So how exactly does this translate to white-tailed deer people? Deer provided the hunter, both indigenous and European American colonists both, with food, clothing, tools, and many other items required for survival and comfort. Deer people, by extension, tend to be greatly desired for their ability to give others exactly what they need, and in so doing, to provide a profound sense of security. This might be sacred knowledge, a calming presence, a listening ear, the precise encouragement someone requires to be their best, most confident self, or something else entirely. These are precious gifts. Imagine being with someone who always makes you feel safe and empowered. Some people can receive this gift with gratitude and then go on their way energized and ready to make the most of what they have received. But others, who prefer to take rather than take care of themselves, can greedily beseech the deer person for more. Takers don't self-regulate, guys. Takers keep begging and employing every manipulative tactic in their arsenal to do so, unless the deer person themselves puts a hard stop to it. Dear people, you are here to give a gift to the world. But if you wish to give on your terms rather than on someone else's, you must be vigilant for liars and manipulators, and you must demand respect. What you possess should not be bestowed on just anyone who asks for it, but on those who earn it. How do you know they've earned it? You'll feel there's balance between you, the giver, and the other person, the receiver of what you possess. You'll be 100% satisfied by what you are receiving in exchange for your gifts rather than resentful. Also, keep in mind that any practiced hunter will tell you they often come home empty-handed. You do not have to surrender your time and knowledge to someone just because they put a lot of effort into attaining it. You can be the deer that eternally evades even the most talented, dedicated pursuers. You can still say no. If someone is not hunting you for your specific gifts, they may instead be attempting to prove their worth by challenging you. While many sports hunters do eat what they kill, most do not need the meat for nutritional purposes. Instead, hunting deer is all about the thrill of the chase and the employment of fortitude and skill. If they best the deer, they've proven something to themselves and to others, with proof of their triumph often displayed in the form of the deer's preserved head and antlers. The more powerful you become as a deer person, and the more confident you become in that power, the more it is as though you are displaying an impressive and therefore tempting rack of antlers, with the result that you are more likely to encounter people who try to make a public statement of their own worth by outsmarting, outwitting, or otherwise outperforming you. If you've ever watched deer browsing, you'll notice how alert they are. The smallest movements or sounds can send them bounding away. This is true of many prey animals. If you have or are something other people want, you need to be constantly vigilant for those who want to take it from you. White-tailed deer people, like their totem, are constantly assessing their environment and the people in it for threats. And one way in which they do this is a reflection of the white-tailed deer's incredible sense of smell. The whitetail's olfactory sense is 500 to 1,000 times better than ours, comparable in fact to a dog's. They can pick up scents from a long distance away and differentiate numerous smells from one another at once. Among themselves, scent is used to mark territory and to communicate breeding status, but it is also the foremost sense that warns whitetails of danger. They have decent eyesight, but they see orange and green as gray, which is why, in addition to green-hued camouflage, hunters often wear a vest in an excruciatingly bright shade of orange known as blaze orange. The vest helps prevent deer from spotting them, while at the same time keeping them from being shot by a fellow hunter. Whitetails also have good hearing, but sound alone does not identify the exact nature of a threat. The crack of a snapping twig may equally have been caused by a human or another deer. But scent, being unique to each creature, advertises what's out there from a considerable distance away, giving the deer plenty of time to flee all but the most canny of predators. To successfully hunt a whitetail, human hunters have to go to extraordinary lengths to conceal their scent, and most hunters will tell you that nothing will disguise it completely, or at least not for long. Like their totem, white-tailed deer people are decent at analyzing another person's actions and how a situation looks, in other words, what they see. And they are equally good at parsing the meaning of sounds and the words that they hear. But at the end of the day, both of these senses can be deceived. A person or situation may look healthy for the deer person and be anything but. Similarly, someone may tell them that they have the deer person's interests at heart and be flat out lying. But what the deer person feels, what they sense, that will almost always tell them the truth. Our sense of smell, which is formally known as olfaction, is related to an intuitive knowing that is tough to explain. We can't really put it into words in the same way we can explain a vision we've seen or experienced auditorily. We just know that something feels wrong despite all appearances, or that it feels right. As I'm saying this, I'm sure many of you are nodding your heads because you're thinking of all those times when, contrary to appearances, you knew what was really going on, but you couldn't explain how you knew. And don't worry, if you need help developing this sense, believe me, the universe will help you. It is not usually the most fun experience because the way that you learn is by not trusting that sense and getting burned a few times, but it's really freaking effective. And once you begin to really understand what you are feeling and what that means, and you learn to trust that understanding, you'll be better armed against those who would use you, and you'll become far more difficult prey. However, even that psychic sense of smell can be fallible in certain circumstances. And if you know what those circumstances are, you have a better shot of protecting yourself, even when it's compromised. If you live in deer country like I do, most of you will recognize the term deer strike, or DVC, the automotive insurance industry's term for deer vehicle collision. When we think of dangerous animals, most people think of sharks or snakes or, bears. But the most dangerous animal in the United States, bar none, is actually the white-tailed deer. Every year, there are 1.5 to 2 million accidents caused by a driver hitting a deer. I know, I couldn't believe it either. And approximately 400 of those result in a human fatality. To say nothing of the many, many more, of course, which kill or injure the deer. It would seem strange that such a famously wary creature would so often meet its end this way. But during mating season, bucks can become so focused on the scent of a female and so obsessed with getting a little action that they dash into the road without the slightest speck of awareness. This is why the highest number of deer-related accidents occur between October and November, which is the peak of mating season. Bucks will literally ignore everything but the female they are pursuing, whether that is the smell of an approaching hunter or the sound of an oncoming car. The sense of knowing linked to smell is normally quite reliable, helping the white-tailed deer person protect themselves and their interests from even the most determined hunters, except when their mind is occupied with thoughts of sex and romance. There are many reasons that deer hunting season occurs at the same time as deer mating season, some of which, for reasons that are too complicated to explain here, are actually intended to support the health of the species as a whole. But one of the biggest reasons that hunting season overlaps mating season is the fact that bucks are simply less cautious at this time. If they smell a female and a hunter at the same time, their attention is going to be given to the female, allowing the hunter to get close enough to take that lethal shot. You know how with certain medicines, the warning label says you shouldn't drive or operate heavy machinery while taking them? It's basically the same if you're a deer person, particularly if you identify more with bucks than does. Love and lust are like a drug, and if you're under their influence, you need to use extra caution in your daily life. Otherwise, you are more likely to make critical mistakes, be taken advantage of, or be bested by challengers. You're also more likely to be hurt by people who did not intend to do so simply because you failed to fully grasp what was going on around you. Staying alert when your mind keeps trying to drift to more immediately exciting places demands an exceptional and often exhausting act of will. But you will save yourself a lot of grief if you can force yourself to slow down, pay attention, and perform your due diligence in every matter when you've got love on the brain. Otherwise, something that you would otherwise have seen will likely come along and flatten you, and it will probably cost you and those around you. Now, you'll notice we've talked a lot about how important it is for deer people to stay alert to their surroundings and the motives of the people that occupy them, and how sometimes this is anything but easy. Unsurprisingly, this prolonged state of heightened awareness can really wear them down, which not only makes it harder for them to stay alert, but takes a toll on their mental, emotional, and physical health as well. There are two things that will help you out here. One is to keep in mind that if you are not prepared to bring your A game when you are out and about, bring your low profile, or keep a low profile. You don't have to shine at every opportunity. Additionally, it is vital that you regularly take time to rest and recharge in a peaceful, quiet place where you can either be by yourself or alone with others that you find soothing. You so often have to function at such a high level that you would quickly burn out or develop severe anxiety otherwise. Now, getting out and experiencing some risk is actually just as necessary as taking quiet time, and we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. For now, just know that you have to operate at a much more demanding level of awareness than most other people. And that means you need to take more time to yourself than most other people too. Now, something that really took me aback during my research is that we actually have trophy hunters to thank for preventing the extinction of white-tailed deer in the United States. Both indigenous and immigrant Americans relied upon whitetails for food, clothing, and tools, and they sold their meat and hides as trade goods, but not in sufficient quantities to imperil the species. However, as the population of the United States surged and spread westward, so did demand, resulting in an acceleration of hunting by profit-driven Native and immigrant Americans both. By the late 1800s, the increase in hunting combined with human-generated habitat loss brought the white-tailed deer population to no more than 500,000 animals in the whole country. Those hunters who killed deer for trade goods made no attempt to revive the dwindling population, but switched instead to hunting other prey, or they gave up on hunting and pursued another career altogether. It was actually sports hunters who did not need to hunt deer for food, but who enjoyed the pursuit as a hobby, who were personally motivated to bring the deer back from near extinction and had the financial resources and political connections to do so. To that end, the New York Sportsman's Club was founded in 1844, its purpose to halt the killing of game animals like deer for trade and to establish and prosecute local game laws. The group was so effective that others were formed, and soon deer hunters were buying and leasing land specifically to protect deer and promote population growth. This was an incredibly successful campaign. In fact, wildlife experts believe that we have more white-tailed deer in America today than we did when European colonists first arrived. And as much as 80% of the funds used in white-tailed deer conservation and research are provided by hunters. All right, so the white-tailed deer population has been revived. It's now protected by game laws, which govern when and where each sex can be hunted and at what age and how many deer a hunter may kill at a time. This is a really good thing, as in the absence of white-tailed deer, woodland ecosystems rapidly destabilize and crumble. Without deer to consume a portion of saplings and ground cover, Too many trees compete against each other for sunlight, water, and soil nutrients, resulting in weakened trees vulnerable to disease, insect damage, and drought. Ground plants, which must also vie for necessary resources, are compromised as well, with the result that they're unable to support the life cycles of native animals, birds, and insects that depend upon them. In these conditions, stressed or aging forests cannot regrow, and the insects and animals they support dwindle and go extinct. We need our deer. And so many of us aren't particularly enthused about the fact that however vital hunters were in reestablishing the deer population, that deer are still hunted for sport. But what if there were no hunters? What if white-tailed deer were allowed to simply proliferate, free from the threat of human predators? This is already occurring in areas that have been protected from hunting or in places where large deer herds are nurtured specifically for hunting, and it has been shockingly catastrophic. With too many deer, the results are every bit as dire as if there were too few. When there are more than roughly 10 white-tailed deer per square mile, the local ecosystem also begins to collapse. In this case, because instead of eating too few tree seedlings and native plants, they eat too many. Here again, dying trees can't be replaced. And because deer are voracious eaters but will avoid most invasive vegetation, the only plants which remain are those which do not and cannot support native animals, insects, and birds. These creatures then starve or cannot reproduce, creating another hole in the very fragile fabric of the local ecosystem. In the eastern U.S., where one deer can easily devour 24 to 36 oak seedlings per day, and 50% of their summer diet is composed of acorns, the white-footed mouse population is declining because the diet of white-footed mice is also heavy in acorns, and their primary food source is being consumed by a surplus of deer. White-footed mice also eat the larva of the invasive gypsy moth, another destructive species. And so with fewer mice, there are more moths. Gypsy moth caterpillars who eat tree leaves can rapidly defoliate an entire grove of trees, and repeated defoliation over 2 to 4 years will kill the trees completely. Too many deer equals too few white-footed mice, which equals more gypsy moths and a lot fewer trees. As one biologist pointed out, it's natural to think of predators as being the dangerous animals. But where our woodlands are concerned, deer are among the most dangerous, destructive animals of all. And they don't merely threaten other animals or plants, as the native plants the deer prefer are consumed and are therefore unable to reproduce. They go extinct, leaving only invasive vegetation, which most deer consider inedible. Then the deer, too, begin to starve. For individual deer to experience optimal health, predation is necessary. Fewer deer means more available food, and therefore better nourished, stronger individuals, and it minimizes the spread of transmissible diseases and dangerous parasites, including ticks. I love the deer that visit my yard. I consider them family, but I don't really love the ticks that come with them. In earlier times, moderating the deer population was the natural function of animal hunters, our wolves, for example. Unfortunately, targeted extinction campaigns, such as the one waged against North American wolves in the 19th and 20th centuries, and in some ways which is occurring now, combined with human-generated habitat loss, have decimated our large predator population, and they can no longer do their job to the extent that we need them to. We have vastly disrupted the natural balance, and to keep our ecosystem from collapsing, we have to step in and fill the hole we created. Most of you watching this video are probably frustrated that this hole exists at all, and yeah, I am too. In fact, frustrated doesn't even begin to cover it. But that does not change the fact of its existence. Someone has to hunt and kill deer. Our world and the deer themselves literally depend upon it. So, what does it mean for the white-tailed deer person that their totem's health and the health of the environment they inhabit is predicated upon the existence of a significant stressor? A stressor that keeps them ever vigilant and which demands the best they can give if they are to survive. In a nutshell, to be your most vital, and vibrant self, you actually need some stress, something that forces you to move and to challenge yourself. And yet, as I mentioned earlier, you also need peace and quiet, a safe place to retreat and be by yourself to recover from the intense awareness demanded by your daily life. The key here is balance. When there is balance between the number of deer and the number of acres of woodland they inhabit, the deer facilitate the proper balance between individual plants and available sunlight, space, and nutrients. This balance in turn supports the health of all the creatures that depend upon the woods, including the deer themselves. White-tailed deer are expressions of balance, supporters of balance, and beneficiaries of balance. And as a white-tailed deer person, balance is among one of the most critical themes in your life. Times of peace, therefore, must be balanced with times of external stress. Without urgency, the life of a white-tailed deer person tends to become small and repetitive, with overindulgence in food and other easy comforts taking the place of mental and physical stimulation and soul-growing challenge. Deer are creatures of habit, and so are white-tailed deer people, who can literally bore themselves to death if not forced out of their comfort zones. Another factor contributing to this has to do with the whitetail's digestive process. White-tailed deer lack upper front teeth. Instead, they have a hard palate and must instead mash and grind their food with their back molars. However, they don't really chew their food when they first eat it. Instead, it goes into the first of 4 chambers in their stomach, from which it is then brought up to be chewed at a later time, usually when they're in a safer area. When the food is chewed and swallowed this time, it goes into the second chamber, where it's infused with microorganisms, which are broken down as the deer brings the food back up to be chewed again, providing the animal with additional nutrition. The food also has to go through a third and then a fourth chamber before it can move to the intestines and eventually be excreted. Metaphysically, when we talk about the way an animal chews and digests, we're talking about how we as humans chew things over and digest or process new things and experiences. The body is incredibly metaphorical. White-tailed deer lack upper front teeth, and white-tailed deer people have difficulty sinking their teeth into things. Instead of embracing new ideas and experiences by grabbing on and bearing down, they think about what it would mean if they did, from every possible angle, endlessly. We are not talking about someone who willingly takes spontaneous leaps or makes quick decisions or enjoys sudden change. Instead, this is someone who, without an external force to compel them to do otherwise, just continually analyzes, worries, and reflects, and tends to resist embarking upon anything new. And this is why stress is so important, why you have to be shaken up on a regular basis. External pressure is what gets you off your tuchus and out into the world, and it is through dealing with this pressure that you not only discover skills you didn't know you had, but you begin to understand how capable you are, and you take pride in that understanding. The more challenges you meet, and the more challengers you evade or outwit, the better you feel about yourself. And the better you feel about yourself, the more enjoyable your life becomes and the more positive energy you can share with the world. The importance of some degree of external stress in the white-tailed deer person's life is also why deer people who must learn to say no to others who would use and or drain them also must experience others saying no to them. Otherwise, they can just endlessly mooch off family and friends and never learn how to support themselves. This is like the white-tailed deer, which destroys its environment by eating it to the ground. Too much reliance on friends and family tends to lead to the other party feeling depleted and resentful. Learning how to do for themselves is supremely good for the white-tailed deer person's relationships. When white-tailed deer people accept and engage with their stressors, the natural result is improved spiritual nourishment. In a stress-free environment, it is all too easy for empty pleasures, such as the physical act of eating junk food, to take the place of feeding the soul. When stress forces deer people out of their comfort zone, they connect with experiences and people and activities that satisfy a hunger of an entirely different kind. If it energizes them and fills them with happiness, this is the kind of food that we're talking about. This food impacts white-tailed deer people on another level as well. Most of us recognize male deer or bucks by their antlers, though females can grow antlers too if their hormones are imbalanced. In the male, better nourishment dramatically enhances the health and size of body and antlers both. This is especially important during mating season, when the antlers are used to spar with other stags attempting to assert dominance. Only the winners of these battles achieve the right to mate with the female. But winning isn't a guarantee of mating. She still has to pick him. And studies have shown over and over that of the dominant stags who present themselves to her, the female most often chooses the largest male with the largest antlers. If you're a white-tailed deer person, the relative degree of success in your life is highly dependent upon the way in which you nourish yourself. On a physical level, this means eating healthfully, or at least healthfully enough. Deer people do love their treats. The reason deer resist eating the most troublesome invasive vegetation is that they prefer the tender stems and sweet flowers of native plants. But you're not intended to deprive yourself. Strict deprivation creates a whole other set of problems. Remember, you guys, balance. So instead, just aim for a diet heavier on nutrients than empty calories. Try to eat more clean foods than chemicals, and incorporate fresh produce when you can. Also, people usually think of deer as strict herbivores, but this isn't true. Not only have numerous hunters reported seeing whitetails consume dead birds and squirrels, they've been discovering munching on human corpses and body farms. Yum! If your body craves meat, eat the meat. If you practice discerning the difference between emotional cravings and the actual cravings of the physical body, you will eventually be able to hear your body tell you clearly what it needs. Some days it may really need that steak. Other days it may want a salad. Still others it may want chocolate or beets. Also, a white-tailed deer's feeding habits shift with the seasons, which is something that we as humans are really intended to do as well, and usually don't. If you notice you want entirely different foods during the cold months than the warm ones, again, trust your body and change your eating habits. A clean, nutrient diet does not fix everything. Emotional stressors can still create illness, even if you do all the right things for the physical body. But especially in white-tailed deer people, it goes a long way. And I want to just throw in a little note here. If you're going to change your diet, please talk to an expert. Talk to a dietitian, talk to a physician. Believe it or not, foods are a lot more potent than we think they are, and it is very easy to overdose and make ourselves sick on something that we would think is innocuous. So don't just Google it. Talk to somebody who's an actual expert, okay? Now, let's return to nourishment on a spiritual level, which again means we're talking about experiences that feed the soul. The best nourished bucks, and therefore the ones most likely to get what they want in life, mating rights with a doe, are readily obvious to the naked eye. When you as a deer person feed your soul, the resulting increase in confidence will be equally visible. It will probably be the most obvious thing about you, in fact. And because confident people are the most attractive people out there, they more easily find themselves in relationships that promote creativity, productivity, prosperity, love, and life-affirming joy. If you're having trouble connecting with the kind of people that would bring these things to your life, focus less on seeking others and more on seeking you. Who are you, really? What do you need? Water your soul with your own love. Do things that make you feel alive, and the relationships will follow of their own accord. The last thing we're going to cover is the result of several different factors combined, and that is the ability of many white-tailed deer people to connect psychically to the realm of the spirit and to the past, whether this is to specific people, to a place, or to events which occurred. We will explore exactly what this entails in a sec, but first, let's start with what makes this all possible. As we talked about earlier, whitetails have an exceptional sense of smell. Smell doesn't just tell us what is, it tells us what was. It's unique that way. We cannot use our eyes to tell us that someone was in a particular place an hour ago. If they're no longer there, we can't see them. We can see evidence they left behind, of course, but if they move through without a trace, unless there's a photograph, for all we know, they may never have been there at all. Nor can we use our ears to tell us that someone passed through. If they're no longer there, we cannot hear their voice or their footsteps or the rustle of clothing. But even with our comparatively weak human noses, we might just be able to smell them. Sight and hearing are ephemeral, but scent is enduring. It tells us the story of what happened after the happening occurred. Just ask any woman who has gone to do a load of laundry, smelled an unfamiliar perfume on her husband's collar, and rapidly came to a conclusion her husband was probably hoping to avoid. Here in Indiana, even if I couldn't hear the rumble of lawnmowers in spring and summer or physically see that the grass had been cut, I would know, because freshly cut grass has a distinct, lingering smell. And not only does scent tell us what occurred recently, nothing catapults us back in time faster than a scent tied to memory. It should not be surprising then that scent is actually the sense tied most closely to memory. It returns us to a place and a time and a feeling. We don't just remember the past. For a moment, we live it. As a result, white-tailed deer people may just suddenly know things about what happened in a place, even if they've never been to that place before. If you've never had this experience, it's quite uncanny and it's very hard to put into words. One of the reasons this happens to white-tailed deer in particular, and not to every person with a totem that possesses an excellent sense of smell, is that white-tailed deer also have superior vision at a very specific time of day, twilight. In broad daylight, their vision is 20/60, about 3 times less clear than ours. But at dawn and dusk, their vision is 18 times better. They also receive and process images at a rate 4 times faster than humans at this time. In symbolic terms, twilight is the between time, the transition between night and day, death and birth, the known and the great mystery. It's when the veil between this world and the other world is believed to be thinnest. The fact that this is the time at which white-tailed deer not only distinguish visual details far more clearly than we do, but are also able to do so at an accelerated rate, translates to the ability of a person with this totem to more easily connect with spirits on the other side of the veil. They may receive guidance from another dimension entirely, or they may connect with departed people or animals. They may also serve as vessels for the wisdom of our ancestors, guarding and, in the right circumstances, sharing those truths known by those who went before us and which have been forgotten by the modern masses. The final factor relating to the white-tailed deer person's unique facility with the past and with the realm of the spirit and the unknown has to do with the deer's antlers. If you remember what we talked about a few minutes ago, strong, healthy antlers require ample nourishment. When you nourish yourself, you become more confident, and people can see that confidence, leading to improved relationships and productivity, among other joys. But symbolically, antlers also function like antennae, growing as they do from the 7th or crown chakra, the energy center from which we connect to the divine. In essence, a nourished body and soul produces healthy antlers, and these are like a direct line to God, whatever you envision God to be. As a result, some things that are unknowable to others, you know. You don't know how you do, but you do. Here, past, present, and future are all simultaneous, and so you may know things that occurred long before or things that haven't even happened yet. You may know things about people that they've not yet realized about themselves. I do want to state here that not all these knowings are monumental. In fact, most probably won't be. You may just have a small, sweet sense about something, and at the end of the day, that something doesn't matter all that much. The kind of awareness that white-tailed deer people possess is quite magical, yes, but you will make yourself crazy, turning every occurrence inside out for deep meaning. So if it turns out to be wildly important, wonderful. Sometimes it really will. But if you simply enjoy these experiences and take them as evidence of how magic life is, you're on the right track. So I hope this has given you guys a good understanding of what it means when white-tailed deer is your totem. And look for the companion video, White-tailed Deer as a Spirit Guide, coming soon. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Cheers!